welcome everyone to the KnowItAll podcast series, wherein you learn about different career options to pursue in Canada. And I feel as if once you go through all the episodes that will be rolling out soon enough in the coming weeks, you'll learn a lot more about what the podcast series is. And of course, it helps you get a good enough knowledge and rather a very clear roadmap of various career options that you can pursue in Canada. So, without further ado, we have our first guest today, Pushpak Sharma, and I will pass on the baton to him, and let's get into the good stuff. Thank you, Pushpak, for coming in, and please introduce yourself for us.
Yeah, thank you, Sachin, for introducing me, first of all. I'm not so a big name, but still you giving me a chance says a ton about what you are trying to achieve through your podcast. So yeah, as you all know, guys, my name is Pushpak. I did my undergrad from India. During my undergrad, I got a scholarship from European Union, and that is when I traveled to Poland. So it was a 6-month curriculum where you were subjected to do Cisco certification along with few of the courses. It was the time when I came to the global side of the world where I met a lot of people from all around the globe. And that is where I got to see the Cisco building and the networking side of the world. And that led me more into the tech side of the things because once you see the things around you, the stuff, it makes you more into it. After
Yeah.
that, yep. And in my last year of my undergrad, I was lucky enough to got an internship. It was an MNC, so I joined it. So it was an year-long internship. It seemed like what you do as co-op in Canada. And luckily, I got to work on a Salesforce platform, which was called MuleSoft. It was pretty new back then. We were supposed to contribute open source, so I also got a chance to see the open source side of the world. And it was mostly on working on Java, but you were creating connectors. So MuleSoft was like an integration platform between enterprise. For example, if you want to integrate Salesforce with any CRM, you can do it using MuleSoft. So it was pretty cool. And then I got into the startup side of the world, which is called Fancy, and that is when I came to know about Canada. I was pretty lucky. Back then, I got to work on Righty.ca. It was a long-term healthcare solution. It was particularly toward healthcare. If you might have about point click care, those are the few integration that we did as a part of that project.
So,
The
sorry to cut you off. Just a quick question. So, when you said startups, right? So, was that still when you were back in India, or you were already
Yes,
here?
yes,
Okay,
back in India.
okay,
That is when I came to know about Canada in general,
okay. And
because
this was
that
when again? Sorry, which year?
it was around 2020 when the COVID
Okay.
just struck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the product wasn't doing really well, but the COVID really helped it to accelerate. Like I knew that there were only one healthcare provider that we had.
Yeah,
And after that, there were a bunch of people's coming in. It got skyrocketed. It was
that's it.
acquired by Walmart Clinic. It suddenly went over the roof. So it was a pretty amazing journey. And that is when I came to know about Canada in general because that product was basically for Canadian market. However, after that, I started looking for something which is remote. It's a fancy term in India. So
Mm-hmm,
remote
mm-hmm.
jobs are basically like you work, you stay in India, but you work for global companies, and you are an individual one. So basically, if you work for MNC, you are associated with any firm, right? And that is when you are being outsourced as a resource.
Got it.
That is when I worked with few of the companies like Property Loop. They were for real estate solution. So
Mm-hmm.
it was one of the first agentless real estate solution that was offering back in 2021. It was early times of again COVID when people were shifting from human interaction to non so human interaction, and it was a pretty good phase where people are coming with different kind of solutioning and those. After that, I worked with a company in China and then Germany. And during that while, I came to Canada because I was working remote, so it gave me the feasibility that you still have a solid income coming into your bank,
Mm-hmm.
and you can go into a country. And I thought, why not to go in a country like Canada, which is driven by immigrants, gives opportunity to immigrants, and offer equal status to any immigrant who is coming in.
Okay.
So,
Maybe one follow-up question here, right? So I understand that you were already you had good enough, or rather you have good enough industry experience, right? When you were even back in India, you were working a lot with startups, a lot with foreign MNCs, still staying in India, right? So was there any specific reason that you thought that Canada should be something which you should pursue, or what was basically the reason behind coming to Canada?
that's a good. So during even my stay in Poland or
Mhm.
working with different companies abroad,
Mhm.
there was one or other guy from any developed country coming to Canada.
I
So
see.
I was thinking that way, like, why are they moving it to Canada? Or
Mm.
like, so Canada is like you will find people from all over the world in Canada. It's not just from India or 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 any country in the Asia. It's people are
Mhm.
coming from Europe, South America.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not to come at a place where you find people from all over the world rather than, and yeah, so that was the reason, and yeah, to coming to
Awesome.
the country.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So I definitely know this, or rather, I've heard a lot of students, especially I interact with, right? So it is more of a common mindset that if you know my friend is going, then I want to go there too, or I want to do that too, right? But in your case, it was more of a way that whichever companies you worked with had a lot of people who were in one way or other tied to Canada, or they were coming from Canada, they used to stay in Canada, right? So it kind of made more sense to go there and explore, right, the
Right.
opportunities. And obviously, like back in 2019, 2020, Canada tech market was, I guess, one of the hottest markets out
Yeah,
there, right? Like
absolutely.
you wake up in the morning and you see like 10 to 20 new jobs posted every day, which was again a big thing back then. But again, awesome. Thanks for giving us a very good background about you. So I definitely know that you were an international student coming to Canada, right? So tell us a bit about that, a bit about your educational background in India, and then what did you study in Canada as
So I did computer science back in India, and here I did a post graduate diploma in full
well? Okay,
stack development.
okay.
This is something what my profile also resonated back then. So I
Mhm.
thought, why not to explore more in the same thing which were doing back home
Right.
as well. So yeah, I
That
did
makes sense.
my post graduation in full stack development.
Okay, good. So I understand you did bachelor's back in India, then you had a good enough amount of industry experience, and then you did your postgrad in Canada, right? So was it because again, like this is a very common conception, right? That getting into Canada on a student visa is the easiest option, right? A lot of people prefer that. So was that something like was it the same for you because you had a good enough amount of industry experience, right? So did
Mhm.
you pursue the path of maybe directly finding work in Canada rather than studying and then transitioning into that?
That's a good point. So even when I was working for IT.ca back in 2020s, I was still looking for jobs in Canada. But I
Right.
believe those jobs do not offer you a job letter if you are not in Canada.
Mhm.
So you
Interesting.
do need few of the stuffs in order to get you in Canada. However, there is one interesting fact. So before coming to Canada, we were like I was thinking to going to Estonia. Estonia is a
Okay.
very small country in Europe,
Yeah. Hmm.
and it offers no tuition fee to international students. It's
Wow.
an
Okay.
amazing country. The only reason I dropped it because it in COVID they weren't really doing so great. Whereas
Yeah.
you did mention that Canada was a hot IT market back
Okay.
then. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That makes sense because I remember even when I came to Canada in like April 2021, again, it was kind of post-COVID, not a lot of things opened up, but I was lucky enough to quickly fly out here and then continue my studies. But even when I was studying, I used to see that a lot of people were, well, a lot of in-person jobs were slowing down, right, because of COVID, obviously. But then that's when I guess the remote work culture like picked off. Like, of course, we always had remote work in tech, right? It was always that you were in fact working as a remote worker back in India. But then in Canada, in North America specifically, the rate at which the remote work picked up was crazy back in 2021. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Awesome, awesome. Okay. So that's a bit about your education, right? So now maybe before we get into your whole job part or how you got into CIBC, maybe let's talk a bit about networking or mentorship because I know we connected obviously a lot before this. We've known each other for a while, but for everyone else who is or might be in a very similar position as you, right? What was your journey, job hunt journey or job process application journey? And let's talk a bit about mentorship as well.
Absolutely. So I remember as soon as I landed to Canada, I started my job hunt right away. So I
Nice.
started applying for full time because Canada gave you the permission to work 40 hours right away. So like it was crazy.
Got it.
Like like a student coming from any country can work for 40 hours, right?
Right. And
So
again, that
I
was just for a limited time, right? That policy.
like for me it was for entire two years. So for people coming
Got
during that range, it was there for 2 years.
it. Gotcha. Okay.
So it was crazy, and I started applying back then. Lucky. I did apply with the same mindset which I was applying back then, like remote
Hmm.
or so. You need to understand that Canadian tech market works very different as compared
Very true.
to Asian market or European market.
Yes.
And that is when I came across few people like you and some others who were providing guidance
Hmm.
and mentorship into how you can break into the tech side of the world in Canada. And I was
Hmm.
lucky enough to get one of your session, and it
Yes.
gave me a few of the insight about what are SWOT, how do you implement those into your resumes,
Yep.
how should you be going for the keywords.
Hmm.
Because in COVID or before that, it was not that hard to get a job. Like if you
Very
have
true.
right skill sets on your resume, it was pretty easy to get interviews. And from there, you can easily. But in Canada, you don't get interviews. That's the trickiest part because if you apply for 500 jobs, you might heard from one or two, and
Very true.
even they might not call you for interviews. So it might be an automated rounds, right?
Yes.
So I did started after those I started I started applying for big companies, but I
Hmm.
come to know that with student permit in hand, it will be very hard for me to get in, even though if the Canada apply for 40 years. That is
Yep.
when I started looking for jobs around my locality. So started
Okay.
targeting niche businesses,
Okay.
and that is when I wrote down and wrote the points where which are the sectors which we can target. So that
Hmm.
is when I came to the world of restaurant equipment side, and that is where I got into one of the companies here,
Okay.
which luckily did not give me too much of money, but gave me good enough of money just to survive and be in the tech side of the world. So,
Got it.
yeah. And that even before that, I did not left my remote job. So I kept on
Okay.
continuing it until I got a job back here,
Okay.
which definitely helped me a lot when giving the references and all those things.
Makes sense, makes sense. And if I'm not wrong, so all of this was not just when you were studying, right? But even after you graduated, I guess you had to wait quite a while to get your full-time job, if I'm not wrong, right? But so it was good that you had this remote job going on, or I think you were doing a bit of freelancing as well here and there. But how difficult is this phase wherein you have the right skill set because I remember having this conversation with you that you have everything that an ideal developer or a software analyst business analyst should have, right? But still what is it that you feel from your experience was maybe missing or maybe not just fitting in, right, for you to get that job or until you got that job.
Yeah, that's a very important point, which Sachin, you are highlighting. So, even though I got that job, I was performing really well, but I was not happy with that job because that job wasn't paying me that well.
Sure.
So I started look. So during, so I got the job right away after my education was completed,
Okay.
but I started my hunt when I was in my education phase itself. So I was
Okay.
applying to every company I could. I remember like I remember me getting in connected with people like you and so on.
Yeah.
which and then giving them the interviews as well. Like for example, I
Exactly.
remember I gave you the interview.
The mock
We
interviews.
did
Yeah.
yes, we did share the screen. You did
Yes.
write me to ask the code, and
Yes.
I still remember it was not just the you. I gave interviews to more than 10 people in the
Wow. Okay.
in the same field. For example, I remember one guy I gave interview who was working in Microsoft.
Interesting.
He took 3 rounds, and he also helped me to go for the good areas that I do have, and
Mhm.
the working areas that he suggested that you should work on those areas. L- uh, Surprisingly, more suggestions were coming on how you communicate rather than
Exactly.
on the tech side of the part. For example, there was one scenario that when been asked, you need to answer it using the SWOT analysis. You cannot
Yes.
answer it bluntly.
Mhm.
If you do it, doesn't matter how good or what structure you have used to in order to solve that problem,
Mhm.
you won't be getting good enough points for that particular question that's been asked.
True.
Even though I did those changes, it was really hard to see the results coming in the interviews. Because as I speak, the tech market in Canada was getting really competitive. And
Yeah.
that is when I started asking myself the question that am I the right guy?
Yes.
That and then I believe I met you or it was somebody else who's told me about AliHack. So AliHack is one of the hackathon,
Um,
and then they pushed me to go into that AliHack and participate in the hackathon, where I believe all the big banks of the Canada were there. They were the major sponsors. The
all
prize
right.
money was big, and luckily I got the like I did got the winner position in one of the categories in Helix.
Nice.
But even interesting, Sachin, after that, like I took emails of that individual candidates who were coming in. I
Mhm.
emailed them and I did
Mhm.
not got my answer.
Mhm.
So surprisingly for student, if you know one of the bank, I'm not naming it, they don't
Yeah.
take your resume. They
Mhm.
see how you are active in outside of the world, which is the like,
Got
and that is why they sponsor these hackathons. And
got it.
even after that, I did not got the interview. So it was
Mhm.
pretty self-questioning, but at the
Yes.
same time, you need to have mentors.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
believe you always put some money for something, but
Mhm.
the mentorship bucket should always be there. So
Very nice.
yes, and you should not hesitate to put money into that particular pack. So you do have mentors when you were growing old, and that were your parents. But your parents might not know the tech side of the world or the Canadian side of the world, and that is
Correct.
when you need to have the mentors.
Correct. Very, very
More
true.
than
That's
that, yeah, I was lucky to have friends, really good friends who were not just the mentors, but they
mm.
were beyond that. Like I remember my friend calling me at night and asking me like, "Have you applied to those companies or not?" And they were sending me like, "This is the job
Yeah.
position. Apply for it." I know one of my friend, or it's one in my team, or it's one in the team that I work with. So it
Mhm.
was really good to have that kind of friend and mentors in
Yeah.
Canadian Engineering. Again, I'm stressing if you don't have a good network and mentorship, even if you have that skills, I don't believe that right this is the time where you can break in into the
True.
tech side of the world.
Really true. Awesome. That's really a lot of good points, right? And I always emphasize this when I talk to a lot of international students, a lot of guest lectures that I go to, that uh, you could be the best developer, best business analyst, best product owner out there in the crowd, right? There are thousands of people applying for the same position. But until and unless you are someone who can stand out from that crowd in a way that you can explain, right? Or you can convey what your skills are in a way the other person receives it, right? Like for example, if I were interviewing you and or rather, you should know which person, what kind of an answer should be given to what kind of a person, right? For example, the very first hurdle that you have to cross in an interview is an HR person, right? Now,
Right.
it's not necessary that the first point of contact is the most technical person of the entire process, right? Your hiring manager is technically the most technical person, right? But if you go on blabbering your technical skills to an HR person, he might not quite understand if you are the correct fit, right? So
Correct.
you need to choose the way of how you communicate the questions or your information in what way to what people, right? So that is one point which you mentioned, which I love. And the second point is to put in money. You need to know where you should be putting your money to, right?
Correct.
a lot, or rather majority of international students, I wouldn't say waste a lot of time, but invest a lot of their time in their part-time jobs, right? That be working at Walmart, McDonald's, anywhere for that matter, right? I'm just naming a few. And again, there's nothing wrong in that. You definitely need to work to, make a living. You need to put in your monthly expenses and whatnot. But then you also need to focus on where you spend that money and how you spend it, right? For example, you said you need to have a small chunk of money dedicated to that mentorship bucket, right?
Correct.
Now, it does not have to be a mentorship bucket. It could be some paid events, some paid networking events you go to, right? Some paid workshops that you attend. Obviously, your mentorship calls, one-on-one calls, coffee chats that you attend. But it's very important to realize the value of those calls or those events. And the sooner you do it, the better it is for you, right? And again, it's not that you just attend one of those mentorship calls and you expect that, okay, tomorrow I'll have a job. It doesn't work that way, right? And I remember
Right.
your case when we used to have these chats towards the end of the call that, hey, I know it's tough out there, but we have to keep going on, right? And it's not just me that you have to talk to. You have to make sure that you talk to a variety of people because the input that some X person might give you, I might not have that perspective, right? But that could be equally or sometimes more important for your own journey, right? So a lot of good points that you covered, which is I hope everyone will learn a lot from those, right? And okay, coming on to the next question. So how all of this going on, right? And then how did you transition from all of these struggles to finally getting that offer from CIBC? So maybe tell us a bit about your position at CIBC first, and then how you got.
Correct. So during all those process where I was applying, I was like, first of all, my hurdle was like I was not getting interviews. Second, when I just crossed those hurdles, when I met with you guys and few of my
Yeah.
friends, even after doing really good in the interviews, the last round I couldn't pass it somehow.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
And that is when I lost the hope of getting into the tech side of the world. And that is where I was really depressed because I tried all the way I could. I was doing pretty well in the current job, but
Hmm.
that is not what I something which I imagined.
Sure.
So, and that is when I lost all my hopes. There is one key motto that one of my people during my mentorship told me that Pushpak, in Canada, you have to be thinking out loud and wide. Like you shouldn't
Hmm.
be applying to just single role.
Yes.
Apply to as many role as you can, and you have to be open about those roles. So
Right.
again, do not see role, see
Hmm.
what are the values that you can bring into that role.
True.
When I start seeing those values, every particular role that I see started attracting my eye. Like I
Hmm.
know this is the role where I can provide my input. If you have that feeling that you can provide the value, you got the confidence in to build the resume as well as during those interviews, and that is where what I picked on. So you have to, first of all, you have to know yourself that these are the values that you can bring onto the table and be proud about it, and let the guy taking the interviews know that these are the values that you can bring.
Hmm.
Second thing, treat the guy as the god, because that guy
Yes.
gave you the opportunity to showcase yourself.
Right. And
Even
they have
though,
the power to say yes or no, right?
yes, and you have to be like, you have to be grateful about that time, that
Hmm.
dedication, and make sure that you present yourself in a presentable way.
Sure.
I have got feedbacks like which I couldn't digest, but you
Hmm.
have to listen to those feedbacks. Feedbacks are crucial, and that is where I collected all my bunch together. And I thought that
Hmm.
was the day when everything were ticking the box.
I see.
Even though like there were few areas where which I could have improved, but
Hmm.
I thought that like if you are working, is something within you saying that Pushpak, now or the next day is the day of for you to be in. Just work toward that goal, see the values, and I think if you have that values in the interviews, you will do good.
Yes.
And that is the day I did. I partially did well, so and I think it the box got ticked, and I was there.
Hmm. Awesome, awesome. But so again, I quite relate with what you said, wherein you see a lot of people don't take that constructive criticism in a good way, right? As if they feel as if I am doing everything right, I know what I'm doing, and if you don't understand what I'm doing, then it's your problem, right? Whereas you took it in a way that okay, even though these are feedback that I cannot quite easily digest, I'm not in a position to have that feeling, right? Because I need to get that job. I need to get somewhere where I want to be. And for that, any feedback that I get, I have to take it as a good thing, right? And then work on it, which is very important, especially at times wherein you feel so, like depressed, or that feeling of failure starts to overcome your motivation. That's when it gets the most difficult. So again, everyone have good friends around you. That moral support is very important at the end of the day, and surround yourself with people with similar interests and ideas, right? That's very important, because you don't want someone who is pulling you down or not at the same bandwidth as you are, because that again changes a lot of things, right? That puts you into perspective as to, hey, am I even doing everything right? Am I even doing enough, right? So that really makes sense. But how was your process? So like, first, how did you maybe land the role, as in what was your entire process? How many rounds did you have? Walk us through that as
So, talking about the one that I got in,
well.
the
CIBC.
first, yeah, yes, the first round was the HR round.
Okay.
They did ask few of the questions. It was
Hmm.
basically around the job role itself.
Okay.
They gave me one case-based scenario, and they were asking about few of the stuff related to your work permit.
Okay.
After that, it went to the second round,
Hmm.
where it was what was taken by my manager, which I'm
Got
working
it.
with right now, and
Hmm.
a senior consultant
Okay.
at that role. It was again like few minutes were dedicated to about introducing yourself, and
Sure.
the later half was regarding again a case-based scenario,
Okay.
where they were testing you against the real side, where you will be working as a BSA.
Okay.
What will be your roles? What would be your what should, like, they were giving you a hypothetical scenario, and you need to treat as one of like the real work scenarios, and you have to
Hmm.
answer them accordingly.
Okay. And for
I would. Hmm?
Sorry, just to interrupt, right? So for everyone who might not be aware, so BSA is a business systems analyst, right? So while you share your story, maybe also explain how much technical aspect goes into that, or what non-tech aspect goes into that, and then maybe like try and relate that.
Correct. So I believe people have an misassumption about BSA, but BSA
Yes.
is still a tech job, right?
Okay.
So they need to know about the no's and how's of the tech side of
Hmm.
the world. Because if they
Hmm.
don't know, how would they formulate their requirements clearly?
Got it.
Correct? Because if you don't know, what would you take it to the development side of the thing? How would you explain it to the business? How would you know what is the right part in order to
Hmm.
achieve those outcomes?
Got
Again,
it.
you being BSA does not restrict you to the requirements itself. You
Hmm.
can definitely ask questions about the implementation side of the thing as well. It
Right.
do comes in one of the artifacts as a BSA as well.
Okay.
So again, so BSA is a, like, I would say you need to have a good know-how of the tech side of the world.
Hmm.
Since the market is really competitive, I would recommend you to upscale you about the cloud, because cloud is a hot market right now. You need to know
Okay.
about the cloud,
Hmm.
know few of the business side of the concept as well,
Hmm.
right? So again, if you want to be in that side of the, so I believe you need to know that the tech side of the world as well. Also, there are few books which you can refer.
Okay.
So BBOK is one of the book where you can go through. Also, I would recommend you guys to go on LinkedIn and search for people who are already working on those roles, and do follow them, because one of my friend, a good friend, he do really post good Medium articles, and I was reading about it, and it gave me a very good insight about what you can expect in as a BSA in the in top five of the bank, right?
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
BSA works differently in each sector, right? Like There is no predefined as such that you are subjected to work only on those parts of the things.
Mhm.
But if you consider financial sector, these might be your roles and descriptions. But if you go into the health side, it might be a different, right?
Got
So
it.
it
Got
gives you the perspective about how you should function and how you should prepare yourself if you want to be in that role. So I
got
recommend you guys connecting with the people who are already working. Um, Go onto their LinkedIn profile. They might have written down the skills.
Yes.
So go onto that skills, look into those skills. Because I know one friend who is working on the capital market side of the things,
Nice.
and he's working on Power BI as well.
Okay.
So it's good to have knowledge on Power BI as well if you want to be BSA in that particular sector. Because
Hmm.
it doesn't matter which bank you go, if they are into capital market, they might be working on few of the analytics tools as well.
Sure.
So
And this is again, I guess, a very common misconception, right? That business analyst equals to Power BI. I've heard a lot
yes,
of people say this, that analysts, they only, or rather, the main job of an analyst is to create slide decks for the management or maybe analyze some data, present it on Power BI, which is not entirely true, right? Like, that's not what
yes,
they do 9 to 5.
they
So I
do
guess
much and beyond.
exactly, right. So what you said, I guess that gives an honest I would say insight on what a BSA does, at least in the financial industries or the banks that we're talking about, right? So okay, so how would you define, let's say if we were to talk about a day in a life of a BSA at CIBC, right? So maybe just let's walk us through that on a high level.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So you are supposed to do a lot of things.
Hmm.
For example, you are supposed to refine the stories.
Okay.
You're not entitled to create them, but definitely you are entitled to refine them. So it should
Mm,
be in such a way that the development team
mm.
can understand and there is a business outcome out of those particular
Sure.
stories.
Mm,
So the stories should be refined in a way that like somebody who is coming onto the story can easily know the story. So refining
got
the story is a big part of what I do.
it. Mm,
Apart from that, there are various artifacts as a BSA you need to make sure, like BRD is one, and there
right.
are so on and so forth. So you need to create those rule sets as well.
Mhm.
Apart from that, you do need to work on the scope document. You need to give the estimate as a BSA what you are supposed on any of the intake. So yeah, there are quite a bit of work that I do as a part of a BSA.
Right. And like I understand you don't really as such have a background in this, right? Like you were like a software developer in the previous companies that you worked at. So how difficult was it for you to, let's say, when you were onboarded as a BSA at CIBC, right? How was that first week? How was that experience for you?
Correct. So my last company that I worked as a into the restaurant equipment side,
Yeah.
the role was quite similar.
Oh, I see.
So,
Okay.
but it do give like I was supposed to work on multiple things. For
Hmm.
example, you do need to work on WordPress, so it's one of the things that they were using. Apart from
Right.
that, you do need to take a role of PO as well sometimes,
Okay.
where the business is not knowing the requirements. You need to drill down the requirements so that a business objective is achieved, and the business
Hmm.
benefit out of those can be viewed by the business. For example, increasing the sales to X amount. How would you do that, right?
Hmm.
You might be introducing few of the stuff. For
Hmm.
example, maybe whenever a customers come to your website, you are creating a heat maps out of it, and then you are making your component accordingly so that the checkout is made smoothless.
Got it. Got it.
So I was into that role even as a software developer. Luckily, I was doing a part of it. For example, during the refinements, right? You go and then you put your inputs as a developer as well, right?
Hmm.
However, in my previous firm, you were giving like I was giving a lot of input, so I knew that how the agile flow works around
Okay.
those.
Hmm.
So and like how the story should be refined and how the business are giving the demos to the stakeholders and so on. Because in my previous organization, they took 2 or 3 developers as well, so that they
Okay.
can show the technical side of the things as a part of what they
Hmm.
were doing.
Makes sense.
It was pretty amazing, and the reason why, because you are developing something, right? But if there is a business outcome coming out of it, there is a purpose driven
Sure.
out of it, right?
Sure.
And then you feel much more related to it. Like for example, you introducing CI/CD, right? What is the benefit out of it?
Sure.
Yeah, right? You can see the benefit because you are
Right.
going to the development faster. If there is a bug, you can release faster, right? So that
Right.
your customers are happy, your revenues are increasing. You can see that things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that makes you feel like let's do this thing so that we can increase the revenue by X percentage, right? So
Makes sense.
it gives you a holistic view around how the software development cycle works, and it gives you more push towards like let's do this so that we can have the business prosperity on that side.
Awesome, awesome. That definitely, I guess, puts a lot of things into perspective, right?
Yeah.
And but if I were to put it in this way, right? So I understand you already had a bit of experience about the field in general, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily how CIBC works with respect to BSA. But then, if there was someone who was completely new, let's say a new grad, or let's say anyone from a completely non BSA background joining as a BSA at CIBC. So how smooth was your onboarding process in a way that because I know a lot of rather banks or majority of the banks, they definitely have a lot of onboarding material for you to go through, but then again,
Correct.
no one expects to handhold you or spoon feed you each and every step of the way, right? So how do you think that part of your journey was?
So on that point, I would say that I'm working with the best team
Right.
during my 5 years. So
Mhm.
people are excellent. My coworkers are
Nice.
excellent. My senior people in my organization are excellent, and even my leadership is excellent. The reason
Nice.
why I haven't seen that leadership in years, they
Mm-hmm.
are pretty clear on how. Like I remember, this was my smoothest onboarding
I
ever
see.
could. They gave me they gave me work little by little,
Hmm.
increasing my threshold and giving me the guidance at the same time as well. So
Nice.
I was doing mistake, but my peers, especially, they were doing excellent, and my leadership as well. So
Nice. Also, I guess.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
they were really amazing. Like I would say my manager and my peers
Uh-huh.
are the best to work with.
Nice. Awesome.
Even
Awesome.
on the team that I'm working, like so as a BSA, you are entitled to one team, but
Right.
you are working with a different team, like a dev
Multiple
team, right?
projects.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that dev team is also quite good. Like they are open to my suggestions. They take my
Nice.
suggestions very sportingly, and their leadership is also excellent. But
Nice.
in general, I'm blessed to be in such a team where you're taken so positive. The peers are again excellent. Like I couldn't be more happier than ever. Like going to the office brings the smile on your face. That is what you need, right? At the end of the day,
Awesome.
and it does.
That actually was one of my next questions. So, how is your culture at CIBC, and then how often
It's
do you have to go in person?
so it's only once. Like you usually go once a week, but
Okay.
it's usually the second Friday that you have to go in person.
Got it.
The people are really nice. More than that, I believe I was blessed to have great managers every time I worked
Mhm.
everywhere. But this time the managers outshined all of them.
I see.
Like he gave like usually if you have an issue, like if
Hmm.
you are struggling with something, you go to them, you will get your answer.
Nice. Nice.
This is amazing.
Right. Because
Yeah.
I definitely know, or rather I've heard a lot that, not all, like, I have a lot of friends in variety of industries, right? So I've heard that not all of their managers or leadership or senior peers are always open to, conversation or helping out, or as you said, resolving the query as soon as possible. So this, I guess, especially even at BMO, I guess, whatever you said, I relate a lot that the management and the leadership is very helping, or rather, the nature and the culture is very open, very welcoming, which again makes a new grad like me or maybe someone like you with experience feel more involved as a team, right?
Correct. It definitely does. And I do see my managers coming to my meeting as well. Like
Nice.
it's a least priority for him, but he
Hmm.
he is coming and seeing, and he is giving me the feedback as well, which is quite
Awesome.
interesting.
Hmm.
So he like it's amazing because I believe he is the one who wants the entire organization to grow as well with the time, right?
Correct.
To adopt new things in a positive
Hmm.
way, and like so it's pretty good because And it's different as well because in big organization you have to work with people a lot, right? Sometimes the
Sure.
feedback might be not taken as that good, but still
Mhm.
you have to be right about what you think is right, right? So
Sure.
I'm understanding that way of the things as well. Because in India,
Mm.
I said yes to everything that was being passed to me. I
Mm-hmm.
did not apply my own sense whether it is in right interest of the organization or not.
Right.
However, particularly in this side of the position, it gives me the first of all the opportunity, and
Mm.
second the right leadership. Because even if you say no to some things, if it's a right interest for the organization, they are quite happy about it, and they
True.
want you to be that way, like thinking in the direction as the organization grows.
Right. And again, the work culture itself, back in India or Asia as compared to North America is like very different, right? There are
Yeah.
two poles, if I were to
Yes.
say, right?
Yes.
And I obviously did not have any industry experience back in India, right? But from whatever I've heard from my friends, from my other colleagues working out from India, I definitely can see a lot of course, there are pros and cons everywhere, right? But especially this part wherein you feel included in those decision-making meetings or statements or conversations, I guess that is very important and I guess uplifting part of an employee's day, right? So I can definitely relate to that. Awesome. I guess we've covered almost everything that we had for today's agenda, but and we are at time as well. So maybe let me slowly move towards conclusion, right? So maybe talk a bit about, or rather, give two or three points, right, that you feel as if new grads or maybe even experienced professionals who want to get into the big five banks or CIBC specifically as a BSA would or should start implementing in their day-to-day life.
Correct. So there are standards books again for
Mhm.
BSA. You can
Right.
go
And
to
again,
that.
sorry to cut you off. We'll put all the resources in the maybe description or the LinkedIn post that we do. But again, yes, please continue.
There are certifications as well
Right.
for BSA. You can go for that certification. It will definitely help you a lot because
Mm.
it gives you the insight about the pillars of the BSA and a lot of things. So it's good to have that edge
Right.
over the candidates. But if you are a new grad, I will give you the holistic view that one of my mentor gave you. So
Mm.
again, the Canadian tech market is already very small right now. Don't limit yourself to any position that you see around yourself.
Right.
See what are the skill set you have, what are the
Mm.
skills that you need to acquire, and what are the values you can provide to that position. It can be a BSA, it can be a PO, it can be a developer, it can be a cloud engineer, it can be a DevOps engineer.
Mm.
Apply to as many as field as you can. See what are the skill set that you can offer onto the table. See that you can provide a value. If you believe in yourself at first, I think there is no position out there in the market that you are not a good fit for. So if you are seeing that email says that you're not a good fit, that means you are a good fit. You just need to brush up your skills. So work on those part of areas, and I think you will be flying around and getting yourself in any of the organization that you are willing to.
Nice, nice. That's good points to have everyone noted down.
Yes.
And one last question that I have is, and again, I know you create some content on LinkedIn as well, right? So how has your perspective been on that, or rather, is it helpful? Has that changed anything for you? Tell us a bit about.
So the great part about the tech is the community. Our
Mm.
community is excellent. Like they pass on information as fire,
Yeah.
right? So if you go, like people are putting their hard work as an open source, right? Why are they doing it?
Yes.
Because they
Yes.
want to see a better or maybe the best version of what we could.
Yes.
So you shouldn't limit yourself. Whatever you're
Mm.
learning, try putting it out. I know a lot of people will say that it might not be taken as positive,
Mm.
but see it as like what you're learning. For example, if you're learning something on Azure, if you were struggling, try writing an article on it because it
Yes.
might be you yourself who might be referring to the same article in the future.
Correct.
All
Very
right.
true.
So C is that you are creating a content for yourself that
Mm.
you can go and refer. Forget about everyone else. If you see the value again in what you're doing, the rest will follow.
Nice.
And
That's very true.
it's very important in nowadays to share information. If you want to grow, you have to share. You can't keep it with yourself.
Very true, very true. And I guess as you said even earlier in the podcast, right, that I guess in one way or the other, at the end of the day, the visibility part of yourself is very important, right?
Correct.
Especially with how congested the tech market is right now, the entire North American tech industry, right? You definitely need to do something different than the other thousands of people who are applying for the same position, right? And that
Correct.
just does not mean to reach out to people over LinkedIn or send those five referral text messages to n number of people, right? That again, that I guess has become the bare minimum that you should be doing in today's
Correct.
time, right? But this part of creating content or trying to build a personal brand for yourself, trust me, at least from my personal experience, opens up such unknown doors, unknown opportunities out there that you are not even aware of. And then it just so happens that everything works out fine at the end of the day, right? But you
Right.
need to put in that work. You need to be consistent. As you said, the community again is very very welcoming, very uplifting, right? So I've seen a lot of people who are out there just to help, right? They just want to
Correct.
bring things out to people that they did not have, and
Correct.
that's the whole point of this podcast, right? Like I would have loved to have something like this out there when I was doing my job search or when I was trying to find my capstone sponsor, right? For example, just a very small idea that came to my mind is, let's say you go on YouTube and write down BSA interview at CIBC, right? I am sure you will get no resources, or rather no relevant resources out of there, and not just YouTube, any source for that matter, right? But let's say after today, when we post this podcast sometime in the coming weeks, whenever someone wants to know anything about BSA or CIBC or culture at CIBC, now they have a very honest opinion from someone who's already working there, who has gone the whole circle of job hunting and going through all these struggles, working as a part-time employee, as an international student, and now again working at a one of the big five banks. So I guess the whole point is to be visible at the end of the day.
Correct. Absolutely. And have that Canadian spirit of sharing.
Exactly, that's true. As long as you have a positive motive, or rather that positive, I would say, reason for doing things, one or the other person out there is there to help you, right?
Absolutely. I do agree with you.
Nice, awesome, awesome. I guess I have everything covered. Any last notes that you would like to share? Pushpak?
No, so Sachin, what you're doing is a great work.
Mhm.
I know that it's easy to say things, but when you're in that phase,
Yes.
it's quite the opposite side. But
Yes.
definitely, like people like you who are providing mentorship,
Yes.
guidance, it's absolutely phenomenal. Like
Thank you. Yeah.
I do appreciate what you're doing, and I believe you are a correct example
Hmm.
of an immigrant
Yes.
coming from a different country and making this country a better place for all,
Exactly.
not just for the
And
immigrant, but I
exactly.
think
That's
for all.
that's the whole, I guess, point I want to emphasize on, right? Like people who have been here, who are like domestic students, obviously this is for them as well, right? But at the end of the day, that first generation immigrant responsibility, or let's say that international student transition journey, I want people to relate to this. I want people to learn from this and believe that you can, follow your dream, or you can achieve your dream. The I'm not sure if it's even a term, the Canadian dream, but
Mhm.
the whatever dream you have at the end of the
Right.
day, right? So if you just need, I guess there are difficult times and in everyone's journey, right? But with respect to how the job market is right now, I guess something new. It's always good to try something new, right? And I hope this is
Absolutely.
a true source of information for them.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All
And
right. Thank you. Thank you so much,
thank you,
Pushpak.
Sachin.
And
Thank
of course, we'll put all the resources in the description. We'll talk a bit more. And if anyone ever wants to get a referral at CIBC, would you be open to do
Yeah,
that?
definitely, definitely. Why not?
Awesome.
If they are the right candidate, I won't hesitate to refer them.
Awesome, guys. So again, we'll put down your contact details, as in your LinkedIn or your any your contact details that you want to share in the description. But I guess that's pretty much it. And thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, everyone.